I've been doing this for 11 straight years. Honestly, back in 2013, I didn't see myself still doing this in 2024. I thought that at any moment in the late 2010s, the channel will simply stop. But here we are. I'm still making videos. I still have a passion of what I want to do with them. And I'm still using as many resources as I have to pretty much bring to life the content I personally want to make and all of you personally love. Speaking of you, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported me in the last 11 years. It's been a wild ride, and your support has been key for this channel to pretty much keep on chugging all of these years. Either if it's a simple comment, a like, an interaction, or even your ounce of criticism, it has helped me to pretty much just keep on going, still produce the content I want, and pretty much keep on improving the quality of it. Pretty much your support, either if it's simple or honest, any kind of support, has been essential for me to just keep on making videos, even at this age. It really hasn't gotten to the point. I can see the channel reaching 15 years of life, and it's all because of you. Thank you, from my bottom of my heart. Thank you for pretty much being on my side all of these years. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for following all of the 11 years. I'm personally so thankful that I have an audience this loyal. Thank you. And with pretty much this introduction, I think it's time to pretty much get to the stellar presentation.
Yeah, it's time for an old format to return in a revamped way. But I don't think using Polymedia Maker nor Belinda Wolf will fit to the type of thoughts I'll share when it comes to this type of videos. So I think it's time for something to represent me a lot more accordingly. Finito, señores. If you have been living under a rock or trusting the day of creation of this account, my username has always been around for a whole decade if you believe it or not. I've been uploading videos since the beginning of my teenage years, and even though uploads have become more and more scarce, I'm still producing content for everyone on a small corner of the internet. And considering that this is the 11th anniversary of the name AGK and Maker 2000, this also means I've been for a while one of the more long-running veteran parodies of the AGK community. Believe it or not, but it's actually kind of rare for someone to be making angry German kid parodies for longer than 5 or 6 years. For this occasion, I felt it was pretty fitting for me to go back a whole decade into the past and give the first AGK series I did a look. Yeah, you heard me right. The current series with a whopping 104 episodes and counting that all of you have in your reach is actually a reboot of a really old series that only lasted 41 episodes. Crazy, right? I know we're just starting here, but I can safely say that this old series has definitely not aged that well. Quality-wise, joke-wise, and even thought process-wise. The views reflected on some of these old episodes simply doesn't represent the type of person I am nowadays. Also, before we begin looking at each and every single episode, I want you to keep this in mind. Some episodes have gotten lost to the sands of time, easily because the files got corrupted or simply because I don't currently have or no longer have access to the devices and files I used to make all of these videos. So if you don't see footage for some of these episodes when I discuss about them, then that's why. With all of that out of the way, let's begin, shall we? And we're we're starting off with one of the most generic kinds of video an AGK parodies can make. An episode about Leopold going to school. I still remember the days when this video was in production. Pretty much I was starting off middle school, I was so young and full of ideas. Excited to make my own AGK series alongside other parodists and share them with the world. I remember how fun editing the video was, and seeing those ideas coming to life were a joy. It's too bad that the pilot is a really poor video. Man, is this rough. I think one of the main faults that just drags down the entire thing is how broken the English is in this video. Like, I'm not kidding here. This entire thing is easily the worst kind of nightmare for a grammar shark. The sentences are so grammatically broken. You can notice the misuse and lack of commas, the misspelling of certain words, and the poor use of time in the verbs. Basically, the entire writing is an awful mess. Let's read a couple of those segments, shall we? Oh my god, Dad, did you just marry with a homosexual or a pony and I will not go to school, it? Oh my god, the lack of commas really makes it too sudden. That, like, there's no breaks. No run, no fight, like, no running in holes or no fighting other students. It's basically no run, no fight. He has my lunch. I will beat him in his ass. That was just unnecessary. Kid, I'm from England. I from England. I like. No, I am. I. Fuck the math class. Fuck! I really hate math. So redundant. That stupid bitch will think I'm doing the math problems. Well, I'm not doing it. I will watch some videos. Again, a lack of comments just really makes like people is just saying this like fast, like. I hope your house explodes and dies there. The house is set yet, and he's saying like, oh my god, this is the most grammatically broken one in the bunch. Like, I hope your house explodes and dies there. Leopold just had something against that random house. Like, holy crap. You say to the teacher some tits, she is a stupid and fucking bitch, and I wish she dies. Again, another grammatically, it's like Drunkus just hates the teacher as well. Like, holy crap. I has a dumbass kid in my school. Buddy, you're also a dumbass. There's also a couple issues with the pacing. It's bold and focused and neck-breaking. Some of the sequences of Leopold in his school either go by too quickly or drag on more than necessary. There's also the fact that it cuts away to Harold for certain things, which, oddly enough, are still the best part of the episode. I love that he overreacts to a video of a dog eating the owner's lunch because they told him through email that it was his lunch. And the part where he attacks Chris, yeah, the guy from the Bad Day video is not Randy Randolph on this series, because he had his lunch, but it doesn't contribute to the story of the video whatsoever. The editing here is also pretty choppy, but to be fair, that's the most common issue with this old series. The editing is super rough, like really rough. Also, this pilot episode was supposed to be a two-parter. It originally ended with some kind of monster rampaging around, and it was Leopold's duty to stop it. It also killed Leonard, but considering it was too much for me, and I still lack a lot of the knowledge and patience when it comes to making an AGK parody, it was dropped in favor of something more simpler, which I'll give props to younger me. If you're just starting off in the business of AGK parodies, always, and I mean always begin simple before diving into the more complex stuff. Overall, this is a poor first episode, but I'll cut my younger self some slack here. It was the first time he was handling Vegas Pro and coming up with a more complete story, so it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to nail it on the first time. Still, a pretty unimpressive beginning. Perhaps I was too harsh with this episode. There's still the issue that the broken English is still here, not as broken as the pilot, but it definitely cripples any chance of understanding any of the math problems. But I can safely say that a lot of the issues the pilot had are more iron here. The editing is a lot simpler, which helps it from not becoming too distracting. The story is more focused here, the pacing is a lot more natural, And the comment here is definitely a lot better. I like the answer of the calories on a potato. The former question, the fact that the math teacher has supernatural powers and is not brought up ever again or treated seriously. And that long gasp that Leopold takes somehow makes me laugh. However, the ending is kind of predictable here. It's obvious Leopold is going to fail the test, although we'll also fail this test with how terribly worded it is. And the part where the entire Slick family start fighting between each other goes for way longer than expected, that I think I made a Family Guy writer proud somewhere. Although, I find the part where Mary just charges to the fight quite funny. It's so silly. Regardless, this is still a mediocre episode, but a step up to the pilot in many ways. Holy shit! A coherent sentence in a really early video? We're going to die! We are only 3 episodes in, and my bias for the Nintendo 64 are just starting to rear its nostalgic head yet again. But yeah, this episode was a product of me playing one specific game a lot of the time. And can you blame me? F-Zero X is fucking awesome. But not this episode. The word I can describe this episode with is generic. It's simply an episode of Leopold playing a game, being shot at some parts, and then raging at certain things. Not a lot to discuss here. Though, I have to say, the English is slowly improving here. Thank God. But unfortunately, this is where a general peeve of mine starts appearing. And that is the fact that the 2014 videos will shove some kind of reference to MLP whenever it can. Sure, pretty much the face of my channel involves an original character that is basically a blue pony. But trust me, Friendship is Magic was a lot more forced into the 2014 videos than in any of the 2014 videos. I also like the part where Leopold just straight up makes Leonard cry, and it's immediately followed with him celebrating getting first place in the game. Poor timing my ass, this is perfect! It's fine, a typical AGK video. Let's move on. I'm going straight to the point. This is so far the best episode of the old series, but I wouldn't exactly call it a good episode. It still has the same faults as other episodes like the broken English and its overall generic execution. But I'll give this episode some credit because there were some parts that actually made me laugh, either unintentionally or for doing its purpose. I really love this section with the high-pitched locuendo Juan. It's so utterly ridiculous that it perfectly fits with the role of a student.
The teacher is not as bent is with the principal roncas tuaralombas.
I also love the essay Leopold writes. It perfectly fits with the kind of character he is. And I have to say, the editing on this episode is actually pretty decent. There's still some choppy parts like this transition right here, Harold entering the house, or some masking work present in the episode, but it's not too shabby or distracting. I kind of like the little animation of Leopold jumping and shaking out of fear. It's quite cute. I also love how I arranged the audio for Harold's dialogue here. Sadly, one issue that keeps this episode down is that it doesn't come into the idea of Leopold having a bad day. It's simply another episode of Leopold misbehaving at school and getting in trouble. And I don't tend to reveal many details about oncoming episodes, but I'm planning to redo this idea a lot more properly for Volume 3. But overall, Episode 4 is kind of decent. The idea is underutilized, the story is too simple, and the broken English strikes again. But compared to the previous 3 episodes, it has a certain charm with its editing work and humor, so it gets a pass by me. Oh yeah, I kinda forgot to mention, but episode 4 actually ends with a setup for this episode's story. That's all I have to mention. Anyways, what a shit episode this is! I don't care what I said on the description of this re-upload, but this episode completely blows. The English is more broken than ever on this episode, the jokes are pretty tryhard here, the pacing is really neck-breaking, and pretty much it plays off as expected with all this type of episodes. The only parts I actually like about this episode is the obese guy doing the funny Vegeta meme from 2006,
OVR9000
and the poor attempt at 2 characters discussing the impure blast. Other than that, while I did have fun making this back then, the overall result is just terrible.
Fuck you, Leopold.
Go the hell, Leopold.
The fact that the older version had a better animation than the 2014 one ashames me so much. I think some of you know that I already expressed my distaste with this episode, but perhaps I treated this episode too harsh. But yeah, after rewatching this episode once again, I think I over-exaggerated some of the issues. Leopold says I didn't go into detail about World War II, so pretty much my thoughts that he deserved a better grade no longer holds any ground. Although, I still think suspending him for failing the essay is still unfair. Not only that, the jokes here were all around a lot better. Like the teacher already knowing why Leopold was late, the way Leopold responds to the question of being finished with the essay,
Leopold, are you done?
the essay itself, and while I'm not a big fan of the drag-out joke of Leopold smashing the keyboard, at the very least it brought that bit of him smashing one more time before leaving the classroom, and the math teacher just being fed up with all of that happening. The pacing and broken English are obviously the main issues with the episode, but I think that was expected for this series by this point. Overall, I think episode 6 has held up a lot better than I expected. Sure, it's not perfect, it still misses the mark with certain points, but the comedy really holds this one up in many ways. So yeah, episode 6! I don't dislike you anymore. I'm still not your biggest fan, but you're not too bad. I was still quite a pussy to play the original Flash game, so pretty much the part of the Scary Maze game will be played by my interpretation of it when I was 13. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this episode, it's generic. I like the part where the computer starts going haywire with the arrow sounds, and then starts playing random stuff, especially this. I like this! I also like the part where Leopold calls the game shit and still goes along to play it, and that little recreation of the winterrowd.com text falling after you get spooked, but with Haru's name in it. But overall, eh. Also, this episode sets up the next one. Another really generic episode, this time with the setup of Leopold having a nightmare. And you know how it goes. A room in weird colors, strange things happening, and scary faces. Though, I'll give my 13-year-old self some credit here. The setup here is actually a lot more original. Rather than starting the episode with him already asleep, Leopold didn't sleep at all after the events of the previous episode, and that the nightmare is all caused during school, all thanks to the math teacher doing a relaxation class for a change. I also like the ending that Harold is the one who gets punished for causing all of the misfortune to Leopold, which is quite refreshing for some to see such a thing happening. Overall, pretty meh. But the episode still deserves some credit for some of the choices taken. I made a trendy episode back then? Okay, sure. Black Ops 2 was already like 4 or 5 months out by the time this episode came out. But usually, I don't tend to make episodes about the relevant game of the moment. Anyways, this episode is an absolute bore fest. A generic bore fest. Because with this kind of episode, you can see a lot of things going on in here from a mile away. Leopold joins a match, gets some kills on the game, gets skill on the game, and then it ends with him miserable. Predictable as all hell! Another thing that I don't like about this episode is that I really overuse the MLP soundbite. We get it, 13-year-old me, you're a brony. Now stop overusing the spike, no! And Fluttershy soundbites, for the love of God! The ending of this episode also sucks ass. While Leopold's team actually wins the match, he gets beaten up by his dad all because he killed him in the game earlier on the episode. It also prompts Harold to destroy Leopold's copy of the game just to add insult to the injury. What a forced ending for an episode. The only pro I can come up with for this episode is the idea that Leopold's math teacher also plays this game and that she's a pro at it. It's a funny concept that I think I use pretty well. But yeah, this episode blows. It's either boring or annoying, depending on your point of view. Out of all the episodes of the 2013 series, this one was the one I had the most fun making, especially since it included some really silly ideas. Not just that, not only was it my favorite episode to make, it's kind of my personal favorite of the entire OG series. Sure, the beginning and ending are pretty rough, but as a whole, it's not too shabby. The editing is still rough, but compared to the previous episodes, this one feels better put together. The humor in this one also is pretty solid. I enjoy how dumb that teen image looks and the way I flipped it. The geography teacher, which her job is at risk if Leopold breaks another keyboard. The videos that have Harold's face pasted on. Harold shooting his monitor to the shock of his workmate. Harold throwing his cell phone to the traffic causing an accident. Which, by the way, is my favorite part of the entire video. And this bit over here. What? Sure, the pacing here is quite fast, but with the energy of the jokes, I can forgive it. And even the MLP reference don't feel shoehorned here. It fits with the joke of Harold having an embarrassing ringtone, and it influences the highlight as well. It may be cliche and rough in some places, but damn it! This episode still has a lot of charm to be found here, even with the faults present. I like this episode. It's not among my best works, but I still enjoyed this one for the kind of energy that it has, and the amount of fun I had making it. This is the first good episode of the 2014 series, period. The next episode has disturbing images who people cannot support. What? Is the KP gargoyle making racist policy promises for his 2024 campaign to the Senate? Also, the subtitles at the beginning are pretty scary. Why? 13-year-old me is writing coherent English for once. That's a sign that the end is coming. Jokes aside, this is a pretty generic AGK video right here. A lot of the jokes are predictable with this kind of episodes, though there's still a couple funny ones like Leopold threatening or expecting the background characters in the commercials to be heard, then him saying he'll punch Leonard in the face when the compilation ends, promise he actually keeps. And the joke about his anecdote about fishing is kind of a standout here that I actually ended up reusing in the newer version of the current AGK series. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say. This episode is another one of those that is so generic, you can easily forget about it between the other bunch. If you want an episode about Leopold watching KP commercials, watch the newer version from my current AGK series. I'm probably going to commission an artist to draw that. Oh, but that house was actually really nice. We can have good things in 2013. Anyways, this episode is bad. While it still had a couple decent gags like Mary telling Leopold to get out of the house in a pretty aggressive way, or the bit with Grandpa Slick, I really should find a way to add him in the current series. This is another case where I don't do a lot with idea here. The concept of Leopold changing houses does have plenty of potential, but not much is done here. They arrive to the new house and that's pretty much the movie plot. The sole purpose of this episode is to pretty much set the most popular image for the Slick household on the old series, and to set up the next episode since it ends with Leopold getting spooked by the Kaffe commercials, all thanks to Harold once again. And you can definitely feel the waste of the idea here since the episode doesn't even last more than 3 minutes. At least with episode 4, that episode is packed with many things to give out a somewhat impression that is focused, but this one doesn't even try. Overall, a waste of an idea and episode slot, since its sheer existence is only to set up the upcoming shakeups for the series. Well, we have reached this point of the original series, the point where episodes start getting lost to the sands of times, and this is one of them. So pretty much stick with me here for a bit as I'll try to explain how these episodes go, although they're gonna make the task hard since this episode is really generic AGK once again. With an episode title like that, you pretty much know what to expect. Leopold wants revenge because Harold did something shitty to him. In this case, compiling all the screamers of the Kaffe commercials into one video. And thus he sets himself to follow his dad at work and record him on his usual day. Then he returns home, makes some parodies out of it, and gains that YouTube fame, baby! Then Harold finds out what's happening, tries to hurt Leopold more than usual. Leopold calls the Max! And Harold gets sent to prison for 5 episodes. The end. Yeah, that's the thing. This episode really is another one of the bunch you can stumble upon, but you'll probably never even remember it because of the other versions. The only thing I can remember about it is the fact that I added in the credits that Harold was going to be out of the series for a couple episodes, and he'll be returning in episode 19. The fact that I only remember part of what I wrote in the credits really tells how forgettable this entire thing was. Generic AGK episode. Nothing to see here, folks. Literally. Because this is one of those episodes that simply got lost in the sands of times. The most overused idea in all of the AGK community. And I'm not doing it any favors considering I'm planning to do this episode a 3rd time in the current series. Whoops! Anyways, generic episode. I really don't have a lot to say here. The episode acts in a really expected way when you hear the title. The only joke I found funny here is the question about Drunkard's brother. The fact that this personal question is in the stupid quiz is funny, and especially since the answer is a generic as fuck name. But yeah, nothing to see here, folks. Now I'm saying this because you should use your time for something else. This is Ronald being happy since he finally made his debut on another AGK series.
Noob! No!
This is Ronald 10 minutes later finding out he's debuting in my old series. Another generic episode that got lost in time. You know how it goes. Ronald joins Leopold's classroom as the new student. They don't get along. They fight somewhere else later in the day. Leopold kicks Ronald's ass. And they become besties. The fucking end. Though this time, I do remember certain aspects like the way I made the RPG battle, which was basic as hell. The HP bars on top, but no menus appeared. They went straight to the attacks. I also remember the scene where the fight takes place at, and the fact I used this track from Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, this is another generic episode. I really don't have a lot to say here. It existed. almighty, we are in a serious rut this time. 4 fucking generic episodes in a row. And another one where it remains in 2013. This is easily the worst episode in the original series so far. Leopold laughs like a hyena with a few funny videos and then his computer trolls him. That's it. It's pretty much like the one in the current series, so pretty much you're not missing much. This episode sucks. Let's go to episode 17. Thank you. Now, this doesn't sound as generic as the previous 4 episodes. This also marks the debut of Jake in the old series. Contractual disputes got in the way back in 2013. Anyways, I'm glad to report we found the second good episode of the old series. It's not perfect by any way possible. The English is a mess in this one. But the gags here are just pretty funny. Like the fact that the history lesson is about the history of the blah blah. The motivations of the bully to beat up Leopold are non-existent. The fact that Mary thought that Leopold died, and the reason why Leopold wants revenge is not because he got beaten up, but because he missed Pizza Day. And talk about that finale. It's deliciously chaotic. Well, yes, it's generic and cliche for Leopold to bomb someone's house or a building he doesn't like. I think I made the right choice to have the original house explosion clip play to an extent with the original audio intact. The hectic chaos of the clip adds up to the absurdity of the story in this episode, especially with the public cheering and the face of this kid. That in context of the episode, he's glad his brother was sent to the afterlife. Couple it with Leopold celebrating like a maniac, and the episode closes on a strong note. Out of all the episodes in the old series, this one has aged the best. The English here is awful and the editing is quite rough, but everything else is enjoyable. Sometimes, all you have to do when it comes to AGK episodes like this one, is that you don't take these stories seriously and run wild with the stupid and silly ideas. Good episode, on par with episode 10. What? A really forced and overused brony joke right here. Not funny, didn't laugh. Anyways, I do like the concept of the episode, and I feel this is one of the few original ones I come up with back in the day. The setup is also pretty good. I like the reason why Leopold is watching these videos is because of a classmate bragging about the existence of ghosts, and he wants to judge it by himself. And I really like the first 2 choices for this video. The whole mirror ones does fit pretty well with the concept, and I really like the reactions of Leopold on the hotel video, especially claiming that the policeman will die all because the shower is on. Pretty over the top joke. Sadly, after the mirror video, this is where the episode goes downhill. The video of the ghost that is going upstairs makes it clear that it's a more comedic than spooky choice, and the last 3 videos are screamers. Though, I still get some mileage out of the London Dungeon one with a comment about the expert, and Rocking Chair gets a few charm points for the live Leopold reaction to it. But as a whole, it's a passable episode. It definitely avoids being another one of the bunch, but it doesn't use the idea to its full potential. But for what it is, it's a fine little bit that somehow used to be the most viewed episode of the 2014 series. Pretty curious, huh? Also, I'm planning to tackle this idea once again for Volume 3 if possible. Yeah, there's not a lot to commentate about this episode. It's also pretty generic, and with this type of episodes, you know how the story beats go. Harold is coming back. Leopold runs away, doesn't have anywhere to hide, returns home, fights Harold, and he wins. The only things I can get out of this episode is the email Harold sends to Leopold. It's so freaking aggressive, only to end on a lap dad of all things. That's actually a pretty good joke. I love that when Leopold calls Jake's mom a bitch, he doesn't even speak anything in defense. He's just like, oh, okay. And I love that the super keyboard here is just straight up a Deus Ex Machina of all things. Of course, I can have Leopold lose in this type of episodes, so pretty much I made up a weapon so OP, it can be a win battle button of all things. It's so fucking forced and stupid that it's actually pretty funny. Good thing I nerfed the shit out of that super keyboard. Overall, another generic episode, but compared to other generic outings, it gets a couple more points for the few moments I can get plenty of mileage out. Ooh, fancy Vegas animation using the transitions. It shows how much I'm improving with the software itself.
That's sarcasm, by the way.
Anyways, this is a case of a pretty good idea for an episode, but with a really botched execution. The concept could have brought so many possibilities for comedy, but sadly, everything was just wasted in another lame episode. I like the part where Leonard's overreaction on overcoming and bonus Nigel on Crash 2 leads to Leopold losing a match of Black Ops 2 of zombies. God damn, I used to play a lot of Xbox 360. That's something I can see staying on a better version of the episode. And I also find it funny the way Harold blew up Leonard's room, and it's all because he tried to fix his TV. Sadly, that's the only two parts I enjoy of the episode. Everything else doesn't feel utilized pretty well, and you can see how predictable and rushed the ending is, which leads the episode to a really disappointing note. It's a bland episode that pretty much bothers me with how badly I threw away an idea with so much potential. Especially with how one scene actually shows glimmers of good utilization of said idea.
Leopold, when you are in 7th grade everything gets too fucking hard.
True.
Ugh, holy shit. We really have sunk way too far with this one. I'm not going to waste any time and go right to the point. This episode is terrible! Not only is it incredibly dull and generic, half of it is straight up unwatchable, all because of the gameplay footage for a Flash game that served as a promotion to the deodorants. Said footage is laggy as fuck that you cannot make up what is even going on, and a good chunk of the episode is dedicated to it, which leaves to little to no time regarding the detention part of the episode. And even then, once that part gets more focused, it's the same thing when it comes to this type of episodes. Leopold does things that get him further in trouble and he gets suspended for his behavior. The ending is also pretty cynical, even for me. Basically, it's the generic beating coupled with Leopold venting a lot about his life, which leaves you feeling sorry for him in many ways. The only parts I enjoy about this episode is the joke about the detention teacher nearly snitching on himself of what he's actually doing, and Leopold singing is amusing, but even then, they don't really do a lot to save this train wreck from even having a semblance of recovery. I know I'm repeatedly saying this over and over again, but this is the worst episode of this series so far. This does not make ABA happy in any way or form. After the decent streak of episodes that I still had saved up in places like my hard drive, I have to unfortunately tell you all that we are back with the episodes that stayed back in 2013. So it's back to trusting whatever comes out of my mouth about these episodes. Anyways, this episode from what I can remember, surprisingly enough, I actually think this was okay at best. It still has some of the issues I personally have with the old series, and from what I can remember from deep inside my mind, it's one of the lost episodes I can remember the most details out of it. I remember that this type of episodes where Leopold just skips going to school without the need of tricking his father or teachers wasn't as common back in the day, and I think the 2014 series did a decent job going with this idea. And even if the pacing was still somewhat easy here, I still used the idea to its potential. I don't remember all of the episode though. I still don't know the way the episode started or ended, but I do remember a good part of the scenes. I remember that there was a scene of Leopold outside the school and with him coming up with the plan. There was a scene of the teacher taking note of who was in the classroom, who wasn't.
Stacy.
Here.
Jake.
Stars.
Ronald.
Puta! Motherfucker!
Leopold. Leopold. That's weird. Leopold did not go today to school. I better talk Principal Drunkus about this.
Then there was a scene of Drunkus and Harold finding out about Leopold's whereabouts. And I also remember that we do see more of the cyber cafe in this series, with a scene at the main desk with an actual employee on screen, which I haven't done anything like that on the rebooted series. Honestly, from what I can remember from this version of AGK skipping school, I think it's on par with the 2015 version of this episode. Maybe it's not, but to be honest, episode 58 of the current AGK series is probably one of the least memorable episodes in the series. It's not bad or lazy, but I think I did a lot less with the new version than when I did with the old version. So in conclusion, this episode was decent for what I can remember. I still could be wrong, but it's on par with its modern counterpart. It just happens that the newer version has better writing, while the older version has a more memorable setting. I'm so tempted to use Alice Cooper's Cool Out for this segment, but you know, YouTube's copyright system is so BS that I'm forced not to. I could use it for the versions found at YouTube alternatives, but I don't know what to do here. Maybe not. This is probably not going to be. Yeah, I'm not really. I'm not using this song in any version. Sorry. Anyways, this episode's fine. While it falls in the category of being another generic episode, I'll give the episode some points for having a couple decent jokes, like the English teacher spilling the beans of what the teachers thought of Leopold during the year, Leopold tempting his mother to whoop his ass, Drunkus retracting his original answer to Leopold's last question, and Leopold's fake report card, just because of this part. I also find it funny how convenient Leopold's school doesn't have a summer school, or the fact that they can't make him repeat 7th grade, so they reluctantly let him go to 8th grade. All that because by the time this episode was being made, I was finishing 7th grade. Blood armor? Nah. Other than that, it's a typical AGK episode. It doesn't stand out as a good or bad episode, but it has enough to not be called a forgettable episode. Oh, look! Another episode that got lost back in 2013. And will you look at that? The episode lost in question is the one where the screen is straight up black for the majority of it. Yeah, I don't have many things to say here. This is easily the most forgettable episode of the entire series by the simple fact that it's nearly just a black screen with subtitles popping in and out with audio snippets of the original AGK video. I don't remember any of the dialogues here, people. The only thing I remember about this episode is how loud the thunderstorm is. You wanna know how it sounded? Yeah, exactly like that. This is the episode I have the least memories of, from the final product to the production. Though, there's still a chance I can recover this one, considering that when it comes to this type of episodes, it doesn't need many files to make it. Got nothing else to say here, let's move on. I'm not doing any favors to myself when it comes to the missing episodes, when I don't even remember much of it by this point, especially to the kind of plots they have. Will you look at that? A plot about Leopold playing a bootleg Mario game! How original! Anyways, this is another generic AGK episode. Nothing stands out here. It's your typical episode of Leopold playing that Mario wannabe cat with a huge difficulty spike to mess with people. You get what you expect from this episode. And that will be all I have to say about this episode. It's not that special to be remembered, and you could argue it's a lot more forgettable than the thunderstorm episode. But to be fair here, I think I still remember some of Leopold's reactions. Mostly the one to the infamous undeniable death, but still... generic. Finally, back to the episodes I haven't lost to the mists of time. And it looks like we are in for some smooth sailing when it comes to discussing the old episodes. Also, this is one of the few episodes to have a cold open to hook some viewers in.
Neat.
Anyways, out of all the episodes in the old series, this one had the most original idea out of the bunch, and it dares to do something interesting with the Slick family, putting another female in the household. Trust me folks, it was pretty uncommon for AGK parodies to give Leopold a sister, and I'll give 13-year-old me props for coming up with the idea here. The story here is pretty simple, and is about introducing this new character to the public that shifts into a small plot of Leopold finding a way to drive her out of his precious computer. I usually tend to have a couple complaints when the story changes focus, but in this case not so much. I also like the resolution of the story. Rather than having Leopold hurt his sister or coming up with a stupid plan, he actually comes up with a good solution to the conflict, doing something nice for a change. I like how he still treats it like another one of his antics. The comedy here is fine. It's not as outrageous as episodes 10 or 17, but it still had its fair share of fun skits, like Harold being afraid of Sarah, Leonard being a show-off to Leopold with the fact that he got the PC version of GTA 5 earlier. Yeah, you heard me right. The PC version on 2013, even before the 360 and PS3 versions released. What a wild thought. I like the reason why Leopold never knew he had a sister was for the simple fact he's dumb. The running gag of people assuming Leopold is gay for the fact he's buying a pink laptop, and Sarah's overreaction to the gift. Simple jokes, not as chaotic as other times. Overall, this is the first good episode of the old series. Not as good as episode 10 or 17, but it does a solid enough job with the idea it had in mind. One that was pretty original considering the period this was made at. You can say this episode is a time capsule now that winterrowd.com is unfortunately no longer active. Though, it can also be said the 2016 version of this idea also serves this job as well. Way to go, me! You just made an old episode stop working as a time capsule by redoing it back in 2016. Also, this is the exact point my fascination for screamers starts growing. Also, the disclaimer is funny. After all that ramble, is this episode worth checking out even with a modern version in your disposition?
No!
It's another generic episode. There's not a lot to say about this one either. Pretty much if you watch the 2016 version, the 2014 version is just like that, but with less screamers, time, and jokes. Although, the ending is a lot different. While it sets up the next episode, it's not like the modern version. The episode ends with Leopold finding out who sent him that message that lured him into the site. And it turns out to have been me with an alt account. Where's my twist of the year, Shyamalan? Yeah, aside from the ending, there's not really something worth checking out in this version of the idea that was better executed on the Red Bullet series. Skip.
And now, time for an important message from your local internet loser.
There's nothing wrong with stroking your ego once in a while, but please make sure to not do it excessively, even during the only time doing it.
Get out of the way!
Anyways, the plot of this episode makes me look like I'm an unstoppable force to not reckon with, since the episode consists of Leopold trying to troll me, only for me to troll him back. You'd think an episode that basically repeats the same joke over and over again will make it a bad episode, but surprisingly enough, and taking aside the ego stroking, this was a passable episode. On paper, it seems kind of lame and repetitive, but in execution, I thought the jokes were done decently. Some of the reactions Leopold gives are funny, and I love how easily he falls onto my trap card. There's not much to say, it's a stupid idea that thankfully gets a good chunk of mileage out of me, even during these days when I tend to make fun of myself a lot more. It's also an interesting episode to come back, since there was no OC to represent me in any way possible. Pauline the Wolf was obviously years away from being created. Pony Videomaker needed a few more months of my fanatism on MLP to reach its boiling point, and heck, even that dumb stick figure I made wasn't on my mind just yet. I'm represented as someone anonymous here, which is fascinating in one way or another. This serves way better as a time capsule, something that the previous episode hasn't held up to that title too well.
Wakey, 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 it's time for school. Come on. Wake up, it's time for school. Come on, man. Are you ready for school?
That was weird. Also, 10 out of 10 editing right here, baby! Woo! Yeah, this is another one of those generic episodes. You know the drill. Leopold goes to school and gets in trouble. Do the math on how it ends. The parts I get a kick out of is the name of the math teacher, as well how much I overuse the soundbites of Stephen saying WHORE.
I hate YouTube sometimes.
But other than that, it's a middle of the road generic episode. It just exists. Moving on. Something is telling me that plenty of these episodes were eventually going to get remade on the rebooted series, and I can't pinpoint why. Anyways, like the previous episode, this is pretty generic. Although, if I can give this episode some credit, this is easily one of the best edited episodes in the old series. Not a lot of the editing mistakes that were common on this series are present here. There are some, but they don't really get into the zone where I'm crying of how awful I used to be at Vegas Pro. There's also the benefit that I actually gave a shit when it came to this episode, because there's another RPG battle, and it's easily the best edited one because I bothered to actually edit in the menus. I know, right? There's fucking effort for once! Another thing that actually makes this episode stand out on its own is that Singh himself is actually green to its absolute worst. Not saying that like a flaw, he truly feels like a danger to society. Although, I went a bit too edgy with how I wrote him because some of the things he says will legitimately make YouTube upset. And I don't blame them one single bit. And unlike the 2015 version of this idea, Sim does. Overall, not a pretty strong episode, but compared to a lot of the episodes found in the old series, you can actually feel 13-year-old me putting some effort for once, and he deserves this sticker for that. This episode came to mind because I played a lot of Burnout Dominator during a random vacation I took back in 2013. Yeah, pretty much the same way the F-Zero X episode came to mind. It's another generic episode, pretty much your common AGK plays, and expect the same kind of stuff in this type of episodes. Though, I have to say, the footage I chose of the game actually really fits with the type of player Leopold is, because a lot of the gameplay comes from folks that don't know how to drift or brake. Kind of a lucky oversight over here. I also like the way I made Leopold say bye-bye. Other than that, just another generic AGK video. If you want to spend your evening time with something, play Burnout Dominator. It's legitimately a banger of a game, you should check it out. This episode is good at foreshadowing what will be happening on the old series. It foreshadows its sudden disappearance. Anyways, I actually found this episode quite solid. Of course, it's not on the same level as episodes 10 and 17, and not even episode 26, but this little episode actually shines in many ways. I do like the way I portray the YouTube employee. It hits a lot more close to home with the kind of site YouTube is nowadays. I also like the execution of the idea. I could have gone the way of Leopold bitching about remaking all of his videos, but thankfully I didn't because of the silly idea of a group of people that have downloaded videos from even the smallest of channels in the site, as well as the fact that they act like some sort of substance dealing business that if you don't give them the money, there will be consequences. Sure, I don't go as in depth to the idea, but hey, props again for 13-year-old me for trying something else again. I also love the name and design of the site Leopold goes to. It's mouthful, and you can easily sense the MS Paint edits here. But damn it, there's still quite some charm and cuteness to it that I can't help but smile at. Overall, solid episode, the fourth good one. Not as good as the other highlights of the old series, but there's still things to like here, as well as another case of a 13-year-old me thinking outside the box. The episode also gets a couple points for aging better than expected. The worst kind of irony here, ladies and gentlemen. We go from one of the best episodes in the old series to one of the absolute worst. And we have reached the point where I go from being not just cynical and analytical, but to also expressing many of my regrets of the stupid things I did at the age of 13. Anyways, the first half of the episode is so generic and boring. Pretty much a good chunk of the time it's filled with these text animations, I guess to show how fancy Vegas Pro is, with literally nothing happening. It takes longer than necessary. The banter between Leopold and the imposter is predictable as all hell, with it ending with Leopold losing his account. Because he's Leopold! There's also the fact that this entire first half is so devoid of jokes. Like, there's not even an attempt to tell one simple shitty joke. Unfortunately, that's just the least of the problems with this episode, since it goes from generic and boring to straight up dreadful. You know the phrase, never feed the trolls? Guess what 13-year-old me did? Yep, he fed the trolls, and the way it came off was just unhinged. I'm not going to mention the user in any way possible, but I have to say here that it was super irresponsible of my part with what I did. Basically, Leopold finds out who was impostering him and calls the police on them, and you expect it to simply end with the troll getting arrested, right? No, because 13-year-old me decided to go the extra mile and have the user be a victim of police brutality. What the fuck what I was thinking at this age? This is supposed to be funny? This is actually fucking unhinged. This is straight up psychotic. If it was with a fictional character, pretty much it would have looked like a cheap attempt at shock and edgy humor. But the fact that I went and added a real person into it is just inexcusable. Even though I made this at the age of 13, the age when you're just starting your teenage years and you don't know better yet, I'm still disgusted with the way I took this video. Out of all the episodes in the old series, this one I deeply regret. The user may have been a troll, but even then, they are still a human being. I legitimately apologize with the way this video went. It was made during an era where I was ignorant and stupid enough of how the internet works. I should have known better back then, and I'll make my best to ensure to never, ever repeat the bullcrap I pulled on this old video. Sadly, this is not the only episode in this series that I regret. After a distasteful showcase of spite and tryhard edgy humor, I'm glad that we're finally back to basics for a bit, and with another idea that I haven't seen many people do in the community. That's a good sign. Unfortunately, the execution leaves a lot to be desired since this is another case of the pacing feeling a bit accelerated, as well the odd issue that much of the dialogue here breaks the show don't tell rule. Still, the idea here is pretty solid and there's still a couple of things to salvage, like the beginning with Leopold making fun of Harold, the teacher ripping apart Leopold's cheated test, and I think Leopold's punishment is a lot justified and certainly realistic since I can actually see this happening in real life. Though I have to say, the English here is pretty much once again broken. Especially on a time where you can see some improvement on my English happening under your noses. Though it brings some funny mistakes, like instead of Leopold threatening Leonard, he's threatening himself. Not as iconic as the "you ruined your little brother's brother," but still funny. Overall, a typical AGK video that gets some points for having a good idea and some funny jokes and mistakes, but the execution of said idea and rush pacing leaves a lot of unexplored potential. Oh look, an episode that not only is about Leopold playing a game, but also strokes my ego once again.
Holy the motherfuck, this didn't turn out a disaster!
Consider me surprised. I didn't remember this episode that much and I went in expecting it to be generic at best, boring at worst. But damn it, this one actually pulled a couple laughs out of me. And I have to mention, this is the only episode in the entire old AGK series to have downfall characters appear. They were supposed to appear later on, but you know what happened? It's not a perfect episode. The idea is not that original. I left one of Leopold's dialogues unsubtitled, which was supposed to have the punchline to one of the jokes, and the yes and no banter between Leopold and me, or more specifically, this stupid ass stick figure that just recently debuted on my channel by that time goes for a bit too long. And the ending is predictable considering the title, but damn it! This episode was a miracle during a point where the old series was running out of steam. The banter between Leopold and the other players is genuinely funny. Here's a couple examples.
Unwahrscheinlich, das Wenk mit seinen wenigen Verwenden der Roten Armee.
Du Hurensohn, ich werde dich umbringen! Glauben Sie im Ernst, der Führer weiß das nicht selbst? Aber er wird niemals kapitulieren. Und damit Sie es nur wissen, wir auch nicht! Ich will Henry, ich will spielen! Ein rücksichtsloser Karrierist. Spielen! Ich werde dich einfach fertig machen. Ich will Henry, ich will spielen!
No, your video sucks. Really?
Los! Starte das verdammte Spiel! Ich will Henry, ich will spielen!
No, you are not my boss.
Ihr schießt. Der Führerbefehl verbietet jede Kapitulation. So behaupten Sie eine andere Welt werden überfallen. Das reicht! Das ist empörend!
It's kind of difficult to describe dialogue-based jokes, you know. So here are the other pros. The length of this video is good enough. You can still get some use out of the idea, but considering my track record with this type of episodes, 6 minutes was the way to go. And it looks like I've learned from some of the faults from episodes 9 and 28. While this episode has a representation of myself present, it thankfully doesn't cross the line of feeling too egocentric. Like, said representation only has 2 banters between Leopold. The character dialogue is thankfully more present in this episode. Like, no annoying audio clips or one-off quotes. The idea of Leopold interacting with the Xbox Live Party is actually sold here, way better than in episode 9. Overall, color me surprised by an episode that had the highest risk of being called generic or boring, and yet it soars through with plenty of funny banter and dialogue. My dudes, we actually have 5 good episodes in the old series. You can feel how dated this episode is when pretty much by the time it was released in 2013, it may have already been considered part of an old trend of hating the pop star. Another thing to mention here is that by this point, I start to get a bit carried away with some of the AD humor here. This episode reeks of stupid teenager edge, which is pretty deserving by being described by this meme. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this episode. This is another generic one that plays tropes that were already seen many times in AGK parodies. The only parts I do remember about this episode is the joke about Ghost from capitalist radio using his grandmother as target practice, and the fact that Harold got beaten up by Grandpa's Lake off screen. Other than that, another episode of The Bunch, one that by the time it's over, you're bound to forget what happened on it. You can now really feel how little steam this old series had by this point, because now I'm trying to replicate the magic of an older episode. No, seriously, this episode also has a cold open, uses the same plot point of why Leopold doesn't remember Leonidas, and a joke about Leonard playing GTA 5, just like episode 26. But regardless of the recycled elements with this episode, it still holds up on its own. It doesn't have a story or straight conflict, but I think it benefits more of being aimless because it does pack many good jokes, like the mental hospital just giving up on Leonidas, the fact that Ronald is self-aware of the many times this has happened with Leopold, the YouTube player rage quitting, and the fact that Leopold cannot remember anything past 20 seconds. Good jokes all around. The ending is a bit lazy, but I also like it because by this point, everyone always expected Leopold to get his way in the conflicts of the episode, unless it was school related, but not this time. He tries to beat up Leonidas, and he ends up being the one getting beaten up. Which basically the episode makes it clear that Leonidas is here to stay, and that Leopold has to deal with his shenanigans. Dumb, but realistic. I also want to discuss the PC telephone sequence. Nothing out of this world, but it's kind of cute to see another attempt at creating a concept UI for an episode. It's basically knockoff Skype, but damn it, it also has charm and cuteness with the simplicity and edits. Overall, the episode has its flaws like trying to recycle elements of another episode and the general lack of aim on the story, but I think that lack of aim doesn't affect this episode considering it leads to a solid output of jokes, charm, and fun in some sequences. We got our 6th good episode of this old series. And unfortunately, the last good episode because, man, the last 4 episodes are just... Man, you can really notice how the old series was starting to go deeper and deeper into the downward spiral ever since episode 33 was released. And we're closing in to the bottom of it. But before we get to the gates of hell, we have to talk about this episode first. I don't like this episode. This is another case of that stupid teenager edge showing up in the old series, and I think it's worse here because holy fuck, I portray Leopold in the worst of ways. Sure, you can see some other parodies doing this idea as well, but I think 13-year-old me pushes to its limits because Leopold here is basically a sociopath in this episode. He straight up shoots like an American patriot in this episode, not caring who gets hurt in the process. He only wants to play Super Mario Galaxy 2. Doing that breaks one of the rules of writing. Don't make your audience hate the main character. And pay attention here, I'm not referring to characters that are pretty much assholes or immoral by design, but rather making sure that their actions, even when they cross the line, don't get into the nerves of the audience, or actively makes the audience root against them. This old version of Leopold did that. His actions are not entertaining and makes you go like,
Wow, what an asshole.
Also, the editing is bad as well. You can notice how little care I had on this series by this point when I'm not even attempting to hide or do something about the fact that the characters and objects are cut off from existence, and how badly utilized the new blue effects are used. They are not used to enhance the editing of the episode, they are either used for editing brownie points or to show off how cool they are. Also, the episode is not funny. That's all I have to say about the comedy. It's not funny. Overall, this episode sucks. Leopold becomes seriously unlikable here for my taste. It's not a well-written or funny episode, and the editing here seriously shows how inexperienced I was still at Vegas Pro. Worst part is, this is just part 1 of a 2-parter, and part 2, oh dear god. I've been reading this episode when I was writing the script for this video. I'm not going to sugarcoat this in any way or form. This episode is atrocious! Probably the worst thing I've ever made during my 11 years as a content creator. I'll get to the elephant in the room first. This is another case of 13-year-old me once again feeding the trolls. And this time, I'm siding more on the side of the troll because I took it too far. Once again, I won't be mentioning the user in question, but I'm mentioning that compared to other trolls I've came across, this one didn't do anything to me. The only thing that troll was doing is bait people with his videos for fun, and 13-year-old me got pissed about it for some petty reason, and decided to portray that troll as a sex offender, the worst kind of one as well. And if that wasn't bad enough, I pushed this shitty joke way too far. 13-year-old me? What the actual fuck is your fucking problem? Seriously, I'm really lucky that this video came out when I was still a kid to some degree, because if I did this at the age of 16, 18, 20 or 22, whatever age, I would have been in deeper shit and in so much trouble for this kind of bullcrap. But even then, this is seriously still unacceptable behavior of my part, because this comes off as straight up malice and venom for no reason whatsoever, and all because I fell into bait. This is not just super irresponsible for my part, this is dangerous shit to do to someone on the internet. I don't care if it's for a shitty stupid joke. Don't go around portraying and joking that someone is a sex offender, because that shit can fuck up someone's life in many ways, as well trigger people who may have been victim of said behavior. Honestly, after rewatching this episode, I want to punch myself in the face for even thinking of doing this on an AGK parody. I may have been young and stupid when I made this, but even then, this behavior crosses the line of being a naive young edgy teenager and the line of stupidity. And that's just the fatal flaw. There's other things that straight up killed this episode. The editing and background work are just lazy. It's not as rough as the previous episode, but you can see how little care this series had by this point. There's no plot or conflict in this episode. It's just a collection of the obvious shitty prison jokes you have seen many times, and even though Leopold was super unlikable on episode 38, this one just exists to punch him down as harshly as possible just because he's Leopold. You can say it's a Leopold torture episode for the sake of it. The pacing is garbage as well. It's obvious you can see how rushed this story is, and pretty much is a snurfest to sit through. Overall, I seriously regret this episode. Not only did I cross the line with that unacceptable attempt at edgy humor at the expense of some troll that wasn't even doing anything malicious, but everything else is just lazy. The treatment Leopold gets is too harsh, even with the events of episode 38 into consideration, and the little care this video had is so evident. This is not just the worst episode in the entire old series, this is one of the worst things I have ever done as a content creator, period. Fuck this video. Before we continue with the last two episodes, I want to apologize to everyone with the way episode 33 and 39 came into fruition. Not only because of how extremely irresponsible and malicious these two episodes are, but for how insulting it may have been for some audiences, especially with the sensitive subject matter of both episodes, used for some seriously messed up poor attempts at edgy comedy, and the amount of negativity and venom expelled from these two episodes that may have put people in a worse mood. My goal with the AGK parodies and other kinds of videos is to always entertain people in one way or another, and it's pretty clear both episodes go against that goal since it was made for anything other than to entertain. I may have been really young when I made these two god-awful videos, and my audience may not have been that big back in 2013, but regardless, that doesn't excuse how extremely irresponsible my actions were during the production of episodes 33 and 39. These were a product of spite, pettiness, and vengeance to some users that the only thing they did was to bait people into overreacting in the comment section, and the videos were an unwarranted and undeserved attack. I regret and disown every single thing done in these two videos, and I'll make my damnness to make sure that a repeat of the errors and sins committed in these two videos never ever happen on the future again. With all that said, let's finish this rocky and messy look back into the works of a pretty young teenage me, shall we? Yep, back again with no footage on the episodes. And ironically enough, on the last two. Funny enough, the cause for why I lost these episodes to time is because the USB that had them no longer wanted to work. And the only way I could use it again is if I reformatted the flash drive. And I really needed it because I used this USB to make the first 30 episodes of the current AGK series. Worthy sacrifice? Probably, because this episode is yet another generic one and the same situation like episode 14. Not much to say about this one. Although, I can say it's a bit more memorable over the first Stupid Quiz episode, because it at least had a more interesting setting with Drunkas replacing one of the teachers and being in charge of Leopold's classroom this time. Something inspired from events in my middle school where if one teacher was absent, then someone on a higher position on the school staff will come to attend us. And that's pretty much it. I remember the setting, not the jokes nor the questions. Overall, generic, but oddly more interesting than the first one, even if it's lost to the sands of time. Final episode, let's fucking go! This video has been going long enough. Let's finish this once and for all. Basically, this older version of the idea is episode 94 of the current AGK series, minus the funny jokes and the energy. Got nothing else to say. This episode is forgettable. The most lost episode to the sands of time considering the better version has replaced it ever since. And that will be all 41 episodes of the old AGK series reviewed. And that was a lot more difficult than anticipated. After rewatching the old series and forcing myself to remember things from episodes I've lost the files a decade ago, I'm not going to lie here, I was a very bad AGK parodist. Don't get me wrong, I've seen worse from other parodies in my opinion, but all things considered, my old AGK series was honestly not that good as I remembered. There were still a couple episodes I did enjoy here, some that I've stood by that opinion for years, others that actually surprised me more when I revisit them after a while. But that's just a sixth of the entire series. Either the episodes here are passable or they're just plain annoying. Minus the shiny and spiteful exceptions. There's also the fact that the editing in most of these are either basic or rough. There's some decently edited sequences, but most of the time you can see I had little to no idea of how to properly use Vegas Pro. There's also the issue with the broken English, which makes some of the jokes or even stories harder to understand. Overall, my old AGK series was simply a mess all things considered. Many aspects have aged poorly, and some moments straight up make me ashamed of the type of stuff I put up onto the internet back when I was 13. While it was a hard pill to swallow, gotta be honest here, what happened back in January 5th of 2014 was the wake-up call I needed. Not just considering how poor in quality the final 4 episodes were, but also the oncoming episode ideas I had in plan if the series kept on going. And trust me, for the 12th anniversary video, we'll be looking to those ideas that never came to be. Anyways, after this higher intervention from YouTube and a needed and relaxing holiday vacation, those allowed me to pretty much have a long look into the mirror and consider things that I could improve as a parodist. Pretty much see which mistakes to avoid repeating on the future, and take some of the feedback people will tell me through the comments of the new series or my old Skype DMs, and pretty much allow me to not just evolve my style of content creation, but also to stand out more on the AGK community. It wouldn't have been possible without the support and feedback from everyone. Thank you for standing by my side throughout all these years, even during the time some of these episodes were at their ugliest. I appreciate your constant support so much. And if you're wondering how I will rank all 41 episodes of the old AGK series, here's the list. In conclusion, this whole series has shown its age in a massive way, and only a 6 of it is worth giving a look back. While there's definitely stuff that I regret nowadays, I'm still glad it happened in some way or form, because it later allowed me to make the right decisions with the current AGK series, as well improve not only as a content creator, but as a person as a whole. Sometimes, in order to hit your biggest high points, you need to hit your biggest low points first. It has been AGK Maker 2000 signing off, and thank you so much for 11 years. Here's for more!